Welcome to 2020, A Sister Story. This is our first sister story of this decade. And to start this decade off with her story, we have Sister Helen Therese Mayer.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Helen Therese.
Good morning.
So thanks for being here
You're welcome.
and sharing your life with us, an important part of our history. So let's look, perhaps, you can start any place, but I'm going to start you with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
I was born in Detroit, went to St. Matthew's Grade School, Dominican High School, Marygrove College for a year, and then entered the congregation. My mother and dad were great parents. You would like them if you could meet them. You would like them, especially my dad. There was something about him that women really appreciated.
Sounds like my dad. Right, yeah.
He was a quiet person, and my mother was the one that was more vivacious and outgoing, But she was a great homemaker, great cook. Oh my golly, very good cook. We always had great meals. She was a stay-at-home mom. One of the great stories about my mom and cooking, this jumps ahead in my story, but Magdalena grew to be friends. I grew to be friends with her when we were studying at U of M in Ann Arbor. And one summer, Joyce and I were coming back to Chicago after having studied, and Magdalena, I think she was coming to St. Charles, Illinois, to St. Dominic College at that time, and she needed a ride. We were going to stay overnight with my folks, so Magdalena came along. And of course, she met my mom, and the two of them prepared dinner. Now, you will find out later why this was interesting, because my mother is born in Germany. She always spoke with a heavy German accent. There'd be no trying to figure out what she was. But there we had, in the kitchen, cooking together, Sister Magdalena from Tokyo, Japan,
Right,
my mother from northern Germany, World War II, is it? All that far behind us. So we just sat, and Joyce especially enjoyed this. She couldn't get over that this Japanese and this German woman could hardly understand.
What did you have to eat?
I do not remember.
Okay.
I don't remember it all.
Okay.
But anyways, I digress. My mother, as I've just mentioned, she was great. She was born in Germany in the early 1900s, 1907. And what is interesting about her life is she and her older brother never knew their dad, because my grandmother at that time helped family with income from prostitution. So Grandma was a working woman, except that her work was not the kind of work that you would expect from somebody. But anyways, and Mother was born from one of her clients, I presume, and my Uncle Peter, her older brother, from another. So she grew up in a small town called Hattingen, up in the northern part of Germany. I visited it one summer. When she was in high school at some time, Grandma met a man, and they were married. They got married. This was the one and only in her life. She was not going to stay in the business any longer. So the two of them emigrated to America for a job for the man I now call Grandpa, because work at that time, I guess, was not plentiful. So they emigrated to Detroit, Michigan, and that's where they settled down. My mother stayed behind.
What was the attraction to Detroit?
There were jobs.
Okay,
the
cars,
auto industry, and
yeah.
other small. I think Grandpa worked for the Garland Stove Company.
The stove.
I remember those.
Saw it, I can see it on the front door of the stove, yeah.
And they lived on the west side.
Yeah.
In a diverse neighborhood. There were Germans, there were a lot of Slovaks. I don't know if there were any Irish, probably not. They probably had their own neighborhood. But the neighborhood that they lived in was primarily Slovak, because Grandpa was Slovak. He was Czech. I don't know where he was born, but I know that he was Czech. And I still can say one sentence in Czech. Ja sam hoka hilta. I am a nice girl. Remember that. So anyways, grandmother stayed back in Germany, and then she came over when she graduated high school. She wanted to finish high school and live with them, of course, and got a job there. Meanwhile, my dad comes from New Jersey, but his story is interesting also, because his parents and family were from what they called Yugoslavia at that time in history. They spoke German. They were part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire because they referred to the Emperor Franz Joseph a lot. So I don't know, but they were landowners. But they too were looking for work. So my dad's parents, and I think at that time they had 4 children. Dad is the 5th. The 4 of them got in a boat, came across the Atlantic, went out to Seattle, Washington, where they had family and were hoping to find a job. I don't know what kind of job, but they were unsuccessful. So back to across the Atlantic and over, they returned to their land over in Yugoslavia. On this journey, coming or going, when they got to New Jersey, Dad was born. I don't know if Grandma said, "This is all the farther we're going today." So, anyways, Dad was born in New Jersey. And that's always, people say, "Really?" Because he retained a little bit of accent, not as much as Mother at all. But so they went back to Yugoslavia
After he was born.
after he was born. And eventually they migrated again, but settled in Detroit. And that's where my parents met. And I don't have any idea what kind of work my grandfather did, but perhaps by then he was retired. But they settled in Detroit. They lived in the same neighborhood kind of, and Mom and Dad met at the all too famous Friday night dances.
Right,
that
where?
young people
Right,
on the west side.
on the west side.
Yeah.
Do you know where on the west
No,
side?
I don't.
Interesting.
But, because when you ask, where did you meet?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I saw him and he saw me, and we danced and we got married. They got married in St. Boniface Church, which is
Downtown.
the German church
Okay.
in that neighborhood. Yeah, off of Michigan Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in that area there. Anyways, Mom and Dad got married. We'll go back to Mother and Father. They got married. They settled in Detroit, of course, in an apartment. Dad was in the sheet metal business. And during the Depression years, yes, because they were married in 1930, during the Depression years, he finished and completed his journeyman and all the other stuff to become part of the union, whatever the union required in those days. He eventually owned his own sheet metal business, which was on the east side. So in the late 30s, they bought a plot of land not too far from Dominican High, within a couple of blocks. Of course, Dominican High was not there at the time. It was still all virgin property, and built their home. My brother was born 2 years after me,
Okay.
and he was part of all 4 of us went and lived on Somerset.
Somerset, not right where it is. Okay.
Somerset. And Whittier, yes.
Yes.
So I started school, went to kindergarten.
At
At
St. Matthew?
No, at Arthur Public School.
Okay, okay.
My mother being German and having grown up in Germany, in Europe, in Europe there were not at that time Catholic schools. They were all baptized Catholic, but then that was the end of it until it came time to make your first communion or confirmation or getting married, whatever event happened, and you finally thought, oh, I need to have proof of baptism. So I don't know when, but it was not in the horizon. It was not in the thought process. So I went to the local public school with the other children on my block, and when it came time for my brother to start kindergarten, and by that time, of course, I was in second grade. I knew what I was doing. So my brother's name is Matthew. So Matthew and I went together. Then when he started first grade and I was going into third grade, Mother, by that time, had picked up somewhere in Dad that these kids should go to the Catholic school, the parish school. We were in St. Matthew Parish. So I remember going with her. I don't know if my brother was with or not. We went and got registered at St. Matthew's to start school there in the following fall. And that was the first time I saw the sisters that I saw.
The sisters were
IHM sisters, the pretty blue sisters.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, they're neat. I just liked the idea of them. So I liked the Catholic school, and right off the bat, I liked the nuns. that was about as far as it went, but I was comfortable. Went through grade school, matriculated to Dominican High with a bunch of friends from St. Matthew's.
Right,
You know, it's
right.
just
Down the road, down the
we
street.
all lived, you know, within 4 or 5 blocks of it. Went to Dominican, graduated, and by that time I kind of had the idea of entering. So I brought up the subject, and it fell flat. It went nowhere.
With your folks.
With my folks,
Yeah.
yes. And of course, I think my little brother was just sitting there watching the drama of it.
So did you decide where? Which congregation?
By that time, I had decided that it would be the Dominicans, because they had more fun. You know, this girl was looking for the IHMs at that time. Did not go swimming. They did not have home visits. Well, that was the final.
Amazing what our
Is it my attraction?
what our attraction is.
Highest attraction, if you heard of
Yeah.
it. So I was not. So I started Marygrove College, which was the
Okay.
plan. And then at the end of my first year, they were hoping for sure. I was going with a fellow, and we were serious, and I had a ring. And Dad was getting his tuxedo ready to walk down the aisle. And of course, meanwhile, in the back of my head, I told my boyfriend, you know, I think I want to try being a nun first before we get married, so that I know for sure. And, you know, okay.
Are you sure now?
I think so. I'm
Yeah.
still thinking. You
Yeah,
know?
okay.
Maybe by 2030,
Okay.
when I'm the only one left.
Yeah.
So then I got an okay, because I was still only 19. So I I entered in September, wrote my letter, got the response and the list of things to bring along, entered the Saturday of Labor Day. There was a small group of us. One of the other small group was Mary Ann Ennis, and the two of us were sent the next day to Resurrection School in Lansing. Big school. And I love...
With your teaching permit.
No, not quite.
Uh-huh.
But I like being where there are lots of people. So that was right down my alley. I thought, this is great. And it was. I taught 4th grade. Mary Ann had the babies. And it was fun. Sister Loretta Jean was the other 4th grade teacher. We were a house of at least 24.
Yeah, it's a big house.
And she was very helpful in getting me through, you know. So we were there the full year, from September till June. The only time we were called back to Adrian was at Easter. At Christmas, they were busy. They never thought of us, I think, because we got to stay there during Christmas holidays, which was lots of fun. You know, we didn't complain about that at all. But then by Easter time, when things had settled, Mary Ann and I and the other pastoralists came in just for Easter break, and then returned and finished off the school year.
So what kind of formation did you have? Now, certainly you taught.
I taught.
But that whole year of being a postulant or whatever, you taught. That was your formation.
That was my formation, I think, and we prayed regularly.
Okay.
Learned how to say, you know, the little office.
Uh-huh.
Was a good house. One of my Dominican High friends, Sister Pat Wegang, was there. We had been classmates.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Sister Matthew Ann was our principal, and I had her for Latin. So it was a good time. It was had by all.
You were blessed by a good community there.
I think so.
Yes.
And the nuns
Yeah.
were really fun. You know, they were very good, very fine. So we came to Kelly's Island and cleaned up and had our retreat out there. And then we met the rest of our crowd, you know, and then returned to Adrian.
And you were a year older in your crowd because
almost
you...
2 years.
Oh, 2 years, okay.
Yeah, almost, yeah. So,
So you were somewhat more mature.
well, I tell you that Easter week when we came in and we had all the girls that had matriculated from, what did we call, preps.
Oh, they came into your crowd?
So, yes. We had these 16-year-olds, and we're looking at them, and they're acting like 16-year-olds. And we had been out, you know, professionally speaking, you know, doing teaching and that. But they were great. Sister Rose Celeste was one of them. Barbara Stanek, you know,
Yes.
2 pillars of the congregation. But we came in. The next crowd entered. There were about 100 of them, of course, because it's June. I got 3 little cherubs, because they all had to have a guardian angel. And there were a few of us, and many of them. And Sister Annalise was one of my cherubs. Just delightful. But that was good. Made profession. at the end, I'm an August crowd, obviously. So made profession the next August. Was sent to Brighton, Michigan. Sister Marie Claire was my first superior there. Gosh, she was nice, really nice. It was a house of four of us. Two older nuns and myself, and Joyce Hibbert was the other sister. And it was interesting. When we got there, Sister Marie Claire said, "Oh, so you're the musician." And I looked at her. There's a little star next to my name. I had taken piano lessons since the age of 7, all through high school, until just before my senior year, when Sister Denise Mainville changed places with Thomas Gertrude, who had been our music teacher. We had sung Denise Mainville's cantata the Christmas before, and had heard all these wonderful stories about Sister Denise and her radio career and everything. And suddenly there she is, going to be directing our senior concert. So I bowed out. I did not. But when I was a novice, because it's on my record that I did all this piano, I learned how to play the organ from Sister Marie Paul. So that little asterisk next to my name followed me wherever I went. And when I got there, "Oh, you're the new church musician," which I was, and learned how to do church music. I already knew because of having been in. So I taught there.
So did that little asterisk follow you
It did.
throughout your ministerial
It did.
life?
When I was changed in mid-year, the second year I was there, at Christmastime, we were all gathered around the piano singing songs. The telephone rings, the superior answers, and we heard her saying, "Yes, Mother, yes, Mother, yes, Mother." So she comes out of the office and she says, "Sister Helen Therese, you are going to Marblehead, Ohio." So I went to Marblehead, Ohio. Sister Arlene Kosmatka came up to where I was, and I had first and second grade combination. Had never done anything with the babies. So it was interesting. I think we had 2 days of prep. I had 2 days of prep, if that. And, when you have babies, they're always in reading groups or whatever. So I would say, "The St. Rose group, please come up." And I never knew who was going to come up out of those little chairs. They came up, and I'd look at my plan book and figure out what to do with them. But it was fun. What was very nice was that we took them out after lunch for a little walk, the babies. I don't know what the rest of the school did. But, these are little kids, and so they're in the cloakroom getting their coats and hats and boots and mittens and all this on. So we walked down to Lake Erie, which is a block away, and look at the water and see what it's doing that day. Come back to school, take off our hats and gloves and mittens and stuff. And what do you know, it's almost time to go home.
Do you think those children learned anything besides that? Now, you spent many of your ministerial years in Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois.
Exactly.
And I think you were taught at university or college. Can you tell us, we can't go through every place that
No.
you've been at,
No.
but perhaps the most challenging?
The most challenging, started Regina, I think the most, I'm trying to remember, probably Aquinas. It was challenging, but Aquinas High School in Chicago. It was challenging, but it also taught lessons, life lessons,
Right.
never. I was at Aquinas twice. I went there after I was at Regina in the late 60s. And at that time, I was near the completion of my work at Ann Arbor. So I was called into Siena Heights to teach French 1 and take classes at Ann Arbor. I finished that next summer then and got the master's. But meanwhile, when I came back to Aquinas, integration was really getting going. And it was slowly turning into black school. And it was comfortable because the students somewhat knew one another. Now, you probably should get somebody else's take, because I sometimes will forget some of the ugly things that might have happened.
Oh, no, it's best you look, yeah.
But
What
at
you
any-
remember,
But
yeah.
at any rate, Sister Jean Denemy was principal, Margaret Johnson was head counselor, and how to solve this problem. So the sisters gathered together in one of the apartments. We were living out of the convent, and they came up with the idea of having the school gather on the next school day or 2 days down in the gym, everybody downstairs, sit in groups and talk about this, and then they would tell them some question. I don't know, what do you find most attractive about the school? And they would talk. Then get one person out of that group to be your spokesperson. It was the preamble to our form of government. Then we went to clusters, then we went to mission groups. So that was, looking back, a learning experience. Sister Jean Denemy and Margaret, working in tandem, really knew how to handle uncomfortable and bad situations. It could have turned terrible.
Yeah, that was a good place at that time, and they certainly were very instrumental in that,
I think so.
besides all of you.
Yeah.
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 What was, I know we could go on and on with
Forever,
that.
because there's
Yeah.
stories.
What, as you look back, has been the most blessed? It sounds like, you know, no matter where you went, you
It
were
was
able
fun.
to, it was fun. You took after your father. But can you just recall one that, or a couple incidents that were the best for you, blessed times for you?
I think that might have been because of the difficult situation that we had. And I learned from it to kind of look to who really has a decent idea rather than just complaining about a situation.
Okay.
Who knows how to maybe resolve it somewhat in a pleasant manner, because Jean's personality was pleasant. Margaret's was pleasant. You know Margaret.
Yeah.
But and the students respected them. That was that was the main thing. So I kind of carried that memory, and little by little, as the years go on, I realized how fortunate it was. By this time, I knew Sister Joyce Banks, and we were sharing apartment space, living together. The first apartment we lived in, it was in the South Shore. There was Joyce, myself, Sharon Culhane was
Okay.
the third one. It's interesting living with two artists, you know. There is the musician.
Well, you're considered an artist as well with your music.
Well, not really. I can speak French and German. Not well, but at any rate, that was good. But the school, and Sharon Culhane also was a forward-looking person. You know, she and very interested in integration.
So it sounds as though you lived with, and especially some of the
Yeah.
women that you've mentioned, really some tremendous gifted
I think so.
women who did look forward and knew how to work well together with others.
Yes, I was at Muldoon for a few years with Sister Catherine Patrick, another
Okay.
great. I don't know if you ever knew
Yeah,
Kate.
yes, I knew of her.
Another
Yeah.
great person.
Yeah.
I lived at Regina with Marie Arthur, and Sister Mary Jane Hart. Well, just living with the two of them. Mary Jane was the superior of the house. Marie Arthur was the principal. And they were delightful. You know, we just, and the sisters, I think as far as fun in the convent, that would be my most fun time. Leanne Walsh was there, and Margaret Hines, and
Great,
Troush.
great women. Now you mentioned Joyce Banks.
Yes.
She was
Joyce
a dear,
Banks and I got to
was
know
a
one
dear friend
another
of yours.
at Aquinas before the Troubles, really. And we remained friends until her death, which is 4 years ago this weekend.
This weekend.
Take a deep breath
Take
on
a
that
deep
one.
breath. Yes, you were very good
Right.
to her.
So
Good friends.
at Aquinas, Joyce got the call from Montini High School in Lombard. They needed a music teacher. Would she please come? Her name was given by our Sister Catherine Dennis, who was still principal there with the Christian brother. So we moved out to Lombard. And then from Lombard, Joyce went to IHM. I came in and went to Mother Macaulay, and I taught French wherever I went. You know, I taught French. Then on to Queen of Peace High School in Burbank, Illinois, which is next to Oak Lawn, St. Albert the Great School, where we taught, our sisters were. Queen of Peace was a Dominican high school, but it was the Sinsinawa Dominicans. And there, too, it was a laywoman who was principal. Another Jean Denemy, you know, a wonderful, forward-thinking idea. And as far as administration goes, I think that school under Patty, Nolan Fitzgerald, was very innovative. They did not have department chair people. She had 4 coordinators. Each coordinator took care of a couple of the departments, and they rotated so that they all had a grasp on what was going on. Every summer, the faculty, on a whole sometimes, did workshop internships, stuff like that. So they really were the most forward. I stayed there 14 years. No. I was there 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a gift for affirming other people's gifts. That's for sure. So let's get back to Helen Therese.
Okay.
Meanwhile, do you have maybe a very funny experience, that you could briefly share with us this is the funniest experience in your lifetime?
I have led her down the days and down the years in the labyrinthian mind of my own mind. When I got to, let's see, because I'm referring, when I came to Weber and got to know the boss at Weber at that time, she has followed me all these years to give this interview. So here I am.
And you think that's the funniest experience?
It was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of one. I don't
An
think.
embarrassing experience?
Probably.
That's a good way to share our humanness with each other.
Embarrassing, yes, by saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And that has happened oftentimes. So I could not nail it down to just one.
Okay.
But because I shoot from the hip and don't think first.
But it didn't destroy you. An embarrassing did not destroy you.
Not really, no.
What have you learned about yourself in these few years that you've been alive? A lesson that you learned that perhaps you could share with us that would be a lesson for us or just something to remember.
I think that to be honest with yourself and to speak the truth, to be honest. When somebody asks you something that you're not ready for, and your first tendency is to fib and to not be truthful. And I can think of some examples of that, but I don't want to embarrass the people that ask the question. So be honest and look for the fun, look for the light. Don't take yourself so seriously. Nobody else is, so why should you, a crowd of one, So, look for the fun things.
We've had, as a congregation, some very interesting experiences. August, we had the Encuentro, and now with moving into this one big chapter, coming together with a couple hundred others, many of whom we know, but a significant amount we don't know. But we're going to get to know more by them telling their story.
I think so.
And then this past weekend, with looking to the future with our Dominican family.
Yes.
How have these been for you? In a few brief sentences.
Oh, okay. Well, they have been invigorating. I love looking forward to the future and what might happen. And I'm sorry that I can't be there for everything. But I was always, as a kid, what's the new car going to look like being in Detroit?
Yeah.
And when they first started talking, when we started talking about 2030 and we got the dynamics, and I thought, oh, I'll live to see that probably. And then 2040, but how it's going to work out. I'm always anxious to see, now how will this idea work out? And then you look to see that it's been thought about by minds that work that way.
Right.
Because I don't. I don't work that way.
Very creative. Yeah.
So I'm, I would say, excited and anxious to see how it goes. And I'll do whatever I can.
Right.
I'll help. Tell me what to do. And I'd be glad to help,
So it sounds as though you experience it as a very hopeful future.
I do. I do. At first I had my doubts because at first it kind of, in general across religious life, sounded like doom and gloom and that you're going out of existence. And some have closed the doors and turned off the light. But we won't, I don't think. Dominicans are going to survive. My Lord, we've survived for more than 800 years.
Right, yeah.
I think, that we will continue to survive in some way. We're not quite sure.
Okay, now, Sister Helen Therese, how do you want to be remembered?
Whatever you think, I'm not going to change your mind. So whatever people think,
What do you think they think?
Some think that I am too harsh. You know, I say you ask me a question and I don't like it, and you know immediately that I am annoyed with you.
You said
Yeah.
honesty, the truth is
Yeah.
important, so.
Yeah, so I think that sometimes, and sharp-tongued. I picked that up in high school, and from the neighbor lady, who I thought was funny when she was sharp-tongued.
So you want us to remember you that way?
No. Remember me as being nice, which I am on occasion.
And how do you like your life here on campus?
I like it.
You
Yes.
live at Weber.
I live at Weber. I knew I was going to live at Weber because Sister Joyce was getting sicker and sicker. And although she didn't have any big disease, her health was deteriorating quickly. And she had told me, I am going to die when I'm 85. And she did. She would have turned 86 the next month, so she just made it by the skin of her teeth. But when you look at the marker on the grave, it looks like she's 86 when she died. But she had a wonderful, Joyce was a great influence because she had a wonderful way with psyching out people. She would say, oh, Helen, be careful there. She could see something in people
Okay.
that I couldn't.
Anything else, your parting words to us?
No, be honest, be happy. When I first moved in, and I was not too happy being here yet, but I knew it had to be, I opened the book, and that day the reading, I can't remember if it was Ezekiel or Jeremiah, saying, I have planted the soles of my feet here.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Wow.
And I told that to, we were, I think, on a mindfulness day, and Rosemary Ferguson was in the group. She never let me forget it.
Good, good.
Yeah,
Good.
and Carol Costin, another good friend. Every once in a while, she will say, now, Helen, you've planted the soles of your feet here.
Good. Good line. Very
So
good
here
line.
I am.
So, and how blessed we are to have
Oh.
your feet on our campus and in our congregation.
Thank
Yes,
you.
the loss of the IHM's been a
Yes.
blessing to us. So thanks so much,
You're
Helen
welcome.
Therese.
And you have
for-
made it a good time also,
Yes.
let me tell you.
Well, thank you for your willingness to share your story.
You're welcome.
Very important part of our history.
Thank you.
Now go forth and tell anyone, invite anyone else you know who hasn't told her sister story.
Okay.
There's nothing to it.
Nothing to it. If I
Thank
can
you.
do it,